Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey with Darcey and Stacey. Let's get to the show. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor, and let's see if anything of interest comes out of my mouth as I watch the show.
He's giving me all the attention I desire, but I've decided to postpone meeting him. Because I did come to the decision that I need to go to therapy for myself.
Yay! Oh my God, yes. I mean, we'll see how it goes. But wonderful. I mean, you can just see the wisdom in her eyes right now. She almost already looks more, healthy or something. I don't know if it's just projection, but this is so great. I'm so glad she's going to therapy. I really hope that she finds a good one, and I really hope that it works out for her, and I really hope it's long-term, because most people need long-term therapy.
To really let things go before I enter any new relationship. Got chills. So I made the appointment for me and Stacey because she was willing to go as well. But obviously things are still tense between Stacey and I because she met Tom.
Wait, what was that? They're going to therapy together, which is fine. As a family therapist, I do that all the time. But I don't know if that's the best course. I think they both could get their own therapist. There's just a lot of individual things that I think Darcey needs to work out. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens.
Let bygones be bygones. Fair enough. So tomorrow, I might take you up on your offer. You said you would go too. So I made us a therapy appointment if you'd like to go. I mean, I think this is more about your relationship, but yesterday you said you were gonna go. I don't think it's a bad thing. I just feel like for myself personally, I have too many things on my plate right now. For me, it's not the best time.
Okay, I mean, it makes sense from Stacey's point of view. She's just like, look, this is really for you, sis. I think you've got some issues to work out, which I would 100% agree with. But she did say, I'll even go with you. Now, I think what Stacey meant was, I'll go with you to get the ball rolling with you and the therapist. I'm not going to go with you because I'm going to get therapy too. I'll just go with you to, sort of be supportive. And Darcey either misinterpreted that or went with it and said, okay, I made an appointment for you and me. I think Darcey's thinking, this will be a therapy for you and me. And it sounds like Darcey's saying, I'm going to confront you about some things in front of a therapist. I don't know if that's what she meant, but maybe that's what she meant. I don't know. I really hope that Darcey can say, okay, I'll just go to therapy for myself, and I don't need Stacey. That I'm going to therapy for myself. Somehow I doubt that's going to happen, but let's see what happens.
I'm happy that Darcey booked a therapy session, but she should be doing this for herself before I join her. Well, you did say you were willing to go when you put me on the spot like that. I didn't say the next day. Well, I take action. Darcey, it's we have less than 90 days to figure this out. One session isn't going to hurt you, but okay. I'll let you know how it goes then. That's fine. Okay. I'm happy for you. It's disappointing to see that Stacey won't even spend 1 hour with me to go to therapy. I'm still committed to focusing on myself, with or without her.
So I'm glad she's going. That's fantastic. It's just another example of how much contempt there is between Darcey and Stacey, particularly from Darcey to Stacey. Darcey has a lot of contempt and a lot of hostility towards Stacey. I've always speculated from the beginning that it has to do with some kind of ongoing emotional problems in the family that somehow left Darcey flapping in the wind. I don't know. And Darcey blamed Stacey for part of it, or felt that Stacey was treated better or something, or that Stacey got more love and attention. I could see a scenario where that was happening. It just seems like there's just so much depth to that hurt and anger in Darcey towards Stacey.
Enjoy your fiance. Let's go eat. Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? I'm good, thank you. Thank you.
It's so nice to meet you. My name is Monica.
Thank you.
Please make yourself comfortable.
Thank you, Monica. Appreciate it.
Oh, interesting. So they're going to film the therapy sessions. Looks like there's 3 to 4 cameras, that's not going to help, I don't think. For someone to be in therapy and really experience that, the cameras can't be there. It needs to be a pure, sacred space for a client to be able to say whatever they want to say. And frankly, for a therapist to not have to worry about being evaluated by the viewing public as a therapist. Now, maybe they're just there for the first session. I don't know. Let's continue watching. But I guess, personally, I'm interested to see this therapist style.
I decided to go to a therapy session. I want to be open to love in the right way. Release past baggage and not bring that into something new.
So we will definitely go at your pace, wherever you're comfortable. If you need a break, you let me know.
Great.
Sound
Thank
good?
you. Yes.
Okay. So if you had to tell me the most significant issues that are going on with you at this time, what would you say it is?
Past relationships. One in particular was a little bit more toxic than the other.
What does toxic mean for you?
That's good. It's phenomenological listening, meaning that you don't take your own assumptions of words for granted. You just, client used a pretty heavy word there, toxic. What does toxic mean to you? It's good. I might have had a little bit more empathy in that moment, like, oh, that sounds really tough. What does toxic mean to you?
Ignored some red flags. And
What were those flags?
well, I was older than him. He was much younger than me.
Okay.
And when I give hard, my heart. And just really feel like it wasn't reciprocal. Like, he wanted a future. He wanted, a deep relationship. And he even wanted a kid. He wanted a son. Jesse and I, we said he loved each other. We said we wanted a future together. And he wanted a child.
So the first thing I notice is that the therapist takes a lot of notes. And in the first session, I'll take notes too. But she's taking a lot of notes. And that's a style of therapy that I don't recommend people do, at least if you're trying to establish a good relationship. I mean, on one hand, it communicates that you care enough to write stuff down. But on the other hand, it's sort of distracting. It's like you feel like you're talking to the notepad and not to the person. And it interferes with eye contact and empathy and these kinds of things. But, I'm not being critical. I'm just saying it's just my style.
Talked about IVF. We wanted a boy. Even named it Maximus. I just don't know why he would say all those things and then treat me the way he treated me. We just never got to that stage, of engagement or marriage. He gave me a promise ring. So that was kind of confusing, but.
Because the expectation was more.
Yeah, I just felt there was a lot of control issues.
So it's starting out good that Darcey is talking about the sort of narrative that she has and the concerns that she has, and the therapist is listening. I have to say, if I were in the therapist's shoes, I would be hearing what's happening, but I'd be thinking about, well, what are the relational traumas here? I wouldn't be thinking about the content. This is something that I run into a lot with my trainees, is they'll hear this sort of talk in a therapy and they'll be like, oh, okay. And the therapist will start engaging in, okay, well, was it her fault? Was it Jesse's fault? How can Darcey find the next man and have that go okay? Do I say that Jesse was a bad person? And it's all surface level stuff. It's not getting to the underlying issues. It's not getting to the foundation that leads to those issues happening. You can, as a therapist, and you should validate that content, that what I'm going to call surface level content discussion, and you don't want to just push past and say, yeah, stop talking about that. Let's get to the underlying issue. But your attention as a therapist, as a professional, should be much broader and much more zoomed out than that. We'll see how the therapist does. I don't know if we're going to get enough data from this reality TV show on how good the therapist is or not. Somehow I hope we get to see, but I also hope they just don't film these therapy sessions, because Darcey needs years and years of therapy that is sacred and confidential and real and not performative in front of the cameras. Now, maybe Darcey can have both be performative for the cameras and a good client in that she's finding meaning and help in the session. But I don't know. I wish that they wouldn't risk it by having the cameras there.
I started to feel like it was chipping away at me. So my self-worth felt lower.
Can you tell me the last time you were in a situation with a partner where you felt safe, where you felt like...
It's a great question. Good, good to get a contrast there. And if Darcey is like, I've never felt that before, that's good information. So let's continue.
Did you feel that at any point with the last two relationships?
I thought I did with the last one, Tom. So I basically knew Tom for like 4 years before we finally met in person.
The friendship was established, which is foundational, and I think that's important,
Yeah.
so that's good.
I felt like he was like a shoulder to lean on, too, and he listened to me, and he gave me advice.
So he was positive.
He was positive, and I really felt like, wow, and he's a little bit more my age. He's a few years younger, but he had a similar life, traveled around a lot. But just that commitment was never really 100% established. I don't know. I thought he really loved me. I mean,
So again, this is great. It's good opening 5 minutes of the first session. It's not very therapeutic in this moment because there's so many other steps that has to happen in order for therapy to happen. She's starting off with her... I wish they would establish the goals of therapy. If you've watched other videos of mine, you'll always hear me say this, is that what does Darcey want from therapy? I don't know if that's clear yet, because she kind of said something earlier about like she wants to have better relationships. So that'd be a worthy goal. Did she say that? I seem to remember something like that, but I would have clarified that as a therapist. I'd be like, what do you mean by you want better relationships? What would be better, and how would that exactly, what do you want to do in therapy? So there's this thing called the therapeutic alliance or the working alliance, which is extremely important. Research shows that when it is established, outcomes are much, much better. And when the working alliance is not established, outcomes are much, much worse. The three components to a working alliance is goals, meaning that you and the therapist and the client both agree on what they are doing. What's the ultimate goal of therapy? 2 is the tasks to meet those goals. What are we going to do to meet those goals? And 3 is a bond, an attachment, a friendship. Friendship is a funny word, but that you like each other and you feel safe with each other. Those kinds of things. So you have to have all 3: goals, task, and bond. When you have that, outcomes are much better. And when you don't have that, outcomes are worse. And it makes sense. If you don't have a good bond, that obviously is going to harm things. If you can't agree on the goals, or you haven't really established that, then you're going in different directions. And if you haven't agreed on the tasks to meet those goals, then obviously there's going to be a disjoint there. And it's up to the therapist to establish all 3 of those. Therapists don't wait for clients to establish that with them. Therapists explicitly say, okay, so I'm hearing you want to work on this. Do you want to work on anything else? Okay, here's what I recommend we do in therapy to reach those goals. I really hope they have a conversation like that. And maybe it'll be away from the cameras. I don't know.
told him everything about my past, what I don't want.
Did you tell him what you do want? Have you ever said to him or any potential partner, these are my expectations. I want you to hold my hand when we're taking a walk outside. I need you to open the door for me. I need you to do these things to make me feel safe.
No, I've never been like that.
Okay, so this is the first major intervention that the therapist is performing. This is a therapist, right? I guess, I don't know if we heard the exact qualifications, because did we? Is my memory going? Because there's another possibility that this person isn't a clinician and they're a life coach or a relationship coach, which can mean good things and bad things. I mean, being a licensed therapist like myself can mean good things and bad things, but at least being a licensed therapist, you know that there's certain qualifications that you meet. With coaches, you could literally be a 13-year-old and call yourself a life coach. So, and I've met life coaches who are very good at doing what the profession defines as coaching. Anyway, but her first intervention here it's not bad, but I don't know if it's, so it depends on what she's trying to go for here, right here. She's saying, have you ever told your partners what you wanted? So there's a lot of good to this in that it's saying you're worth it and you deserve to ask for things. You deserve to want things. And I'm validating you. And I'm saying that I'm on your side. So there's a lot of goodwill. That bond that I was talking about is facilitated by this. What's a little worrying to me about this intervention is this is a very common knee-jerk reaction that therapists will have, is that they'll have a client that will be complaining about relationships, and the therapist, due to their own countertransference or their lack of therapeutic vision, will just sort of jump to this extremely easy direction to go in, which is like, well, you just have to stand up for yourself. You just have to tell people what's up. And it misses the point, because I'm guessing most of you, or at least me, when I watched Darcey, especially with Tom, have a relationship that didn't go well, particularly in the beginning. As the time went on, it's harder to evaluate, because they were both, it was such a weird, the second season that for her and Tom, the relationship was so tenuous that it's hard to know what was going on. But that first season, when they were actually dating and it seemed like Tom was in it to win it, then in that situation, I wouldn't say that it was because Darcey didn't assert herself. Now, you could make the argument that Darcey didn't know what she wanted enough and didn't really stand on her own 2 feet often enough. But I don't think we would say that it was because she didn't ask for them, because really she did ask for a lot of things. She wanted Tom to do this. She wanted Tom to do that. It wasn't wrong that she said that. It was good that she said that. Anyway, so this is a good intervention. It's validating. It's bonding. I'm just worried that if this is all that the therapy does, and this is sort of the options available to the therapist, I guess I'm just really, so this is, okay. I'm terrified that Darcey will not get the therapy that she needs. Now, this therapist might be the best therapist in the world. I really hope that that's true. And so I'm cringing and I'm terrified. I'm like, okay, she's finally in therapy. For the love of God, help make this go well and make this be the therapist that she needs and deserves. I so much hope that. So I guess that's just what's happening right now. I'm just terrified. And I'm like, oh God, what's happening?
As long as you accept what someone gives you, they're going to continue to give it to you.
Why do I get stuck in these relationships where I feel like I'm being,
never good enough.
Or not good enough?
So this is exactly in line with an unhelpful narrative that Darcey has anyway, which Darcey is taking to very well. It's not a bad narrative, but if that's all that this therapy is going to amount to, I'm really worried about it. Again, I'm not giving this therapy. This is literally the first 6 minutes of therapy of the first session, so who knows. But this is exactly in line with Darcey's narrative. It's not a bad narrative, but if it's the only narrative, then it doesn't help. And it's a narrative of, I need to stand up for myself. I deserve better. I'm going to demand better. And I'm going to find a man and I'm going to tell him I deserve better. Or I'm going to find a good man who will treat me better. She was exactly like that after Jesse and had this same attitude. So the therapist is basically supporting Darcey's exact narrative that she had before she met Tom. How did that narrative work out for Darcey? It didn't work out at all, because underlying all of these issues, I believe, the total speculation based on what we've seen, is that for Darcey, she has deep feelings of worthlessness and that she doesn't matter, and deep feelings of people don't care about her, and deep feelings that people are inherently going to hurt her and that she might even deserve to be hurt, and deep feelings that there's something wrong with her. Also, she has a pattern of, seemingly from Tom's report, of which we don't necessarily believe, but if we heard from Tom that when they were away from the cameras, she wasn't really interested in him, or he didn't get the impression that she was interested in who he was, that she loved him and was nice to him, but she wasn't really intimately interested in who Tom was, and didn't really reach out and say, who is this person? I want to ask questions. I want to know him. I want to value him. I want to know, and vice versa. Now, we don't know, maybe Tom has a weird perspective, but it seemed credible to me, and it is in line with a lot of the things we've seen in Darcey. It's basically when you're mistreated growing up and you have relational traumas, you're suffering so much that you don't really have time to think about other people's feelings. You don't have time to slow down and go like, hey, who are you? Because you're in so much pain and you're so terrified of, is this relationship going to work out, which Darcey has exhibited from the beginning, that you just don't really have time to think, hey, let's relax and let me investigate who you are. And I'm not going to think about me in this moment. I'm going to think about you. And then we'll reverse and we'll think about me and you'll ask me questions, that's what falling in love and feeling bonded with someone involves. So those are the things that I think need to be investigated for awareness sake and for healing's sake, for the corrective experiences. What I'm not going to be very optimistic about is bolstering Darcey's notion of like, I need to stand up for myself. And I want to be clear, she does deserve to stand up for herself. But if that's the only thing that happens, and her traumas and her issues and her self-esteem and her worthlessness and her fears and her desperations and all of her defenses are not touched upon, then I don't see this helping at all. Now, the thing I'm kind of holding out for is that Georgie is a completely different sort of guy, and he's wonderful, and it'll just work out, which is possible. Lots of people have issues, and they just sort of find the right person, and it works out. So I'm hoping for two things. I'm hoping that this therapist, in the first 6 minutes, this isn't a complete indication of the repertoire of this therapist's abilities. I'm hoping that this person is a competent, clinician. And I'm hoping that Georgie just sort of randomly fits with her issues. That's my hope. Jesse and Tom clearly did not. Anyway, let's continue watching.
Maybe we felt like didn't deserve that or something. And I
Do you
felt like
think
I
you
deserved the negative. I don't know.
Okay, so we're hearing this, and this is seeing it touched upon. That dichotomy between I deserve better and I'm not going to take any crap, and then I'm worthless. So when we feel worthless, we have a number of options. And one of the options available to us, which is what Darcey often falls into, which is I deserve better and those people are worthless and I'm moving on in life and I'm a strong person and I don't need other people to define me. And it's good, you're like, angry and you're gonna do it. But at some point you got to slow down and really look at the worthlessness and the traumas that you've been through, wrestle with that, express that, get corrective experiences so that you don't have to be so, tough all the time. And she's falling into that space right now, which is great. In the first 7 minutes of therapy for her to get to what I believe to be the core issue. And let's see what the therapist does. So what am I looking for? What I would do is I would just sit with it. It's first session stuff. I would say, wow, I'm feeling a lot of pain. I'm hearing that you wonder if you're worth it. You want to be strong, but it feels like there's some real wounds there. I would just sort of reflect and not try to take it away, not interpret because I don't know her well enough. I would just sit with it because this is the core. When people start crying in therapy, of which they usually do, this is like, okay, we've arrived. This is the core issue. And if you're a client out there in your own therapy, I recommend trying to have a good cry every now and then. You might have to cry the entire session. It's just one of those things. But anyway, so when I see this in a client, I'm like, okay, good. I'm so honored that they arrived at this place. I don't want to mess with it. That's always my initial thing is like, I have an impulse to like, oh my God, it's okay because it's scary to watch someone suffer. But I've been around the block enough times to know that that's not a good impulse. So I just, so I do some tending to my own differentiation level. Everything's fine. And I say, okay, wow, a lot of pain there. I hear a lot of pain. Tell me more, that kind of stuff.
Who told you that you didn't deserve those things?
I don't know.
Can you remember any pivotal moment in your life where something occurred where it was like, oh, okay, everybody else is okay to have that, but Darcey's not?
Okay, literal chills. So I have total utmost optimism about this therapist. So so that would be another direction to go. Normally, for my style, I would have stuck with it. But eventually I would have gotten there, and that's like such a critical question. And that's the question I've had from the very beginning with Darcey. Who made you feel like you were worthless? Where does that come from? Let's talk about that. And you see Darcey is like, huh. And that indicates to me that she hasn't been in therapy that's helped her with this. And two, she hasn't even reflected on it because it's so painful. So it's such an elementary question of like, you have deep feelings of worthlessness. Who told you that? Or who treated you in a way that made you feel that way? That's a critical thing that as therapy moves forward, I always call back to. I always have this conversation with people, and it could be 5 years later, and I'll be still saying, well, it sounds like that old lesson you learned when you were growing up is coming up right now. Let's talk about that. Anyway, this is fantastic. Again, literal chills when she said that question.
Sometimes things will happen to us and we repress it, but it lingers. So tell me about your relationship with your dad.
He was gone a lot. He worked hard to support the family. And my mom, they divorced when we were like 12.
Okay, I would have stuck with that a little longer and said like, okay. So because you could see Darcey, her gears were turning, which is normal if she's never thought about it before. And I would have stuck with it a little longer and just been like, okay, well, what comes to mind? When you think about, the thing I always tell trainees is the first time you ask a beautiful question to a client, you will almost never get an answer because the question is so central and so good that the client has some kind of block to that. And so you have to ask it from several different directions. So she said, who taught you that? And Darcey's like, I don't know. And then you could say, well, let's think back. When you were young, did anything happen that made you feel like you were worthless? Now, the therapist seemed to be intimating that, she said repressed memories. And listen to my deep dives on repressed memories. There is such a thing. It depends on what we mean by repressed memory. In the classic Freudian sense, there's really no such thing as repressed memory, but there is such thing as a memory that is difficult to access unless you have a certain kind of safety or process, which I've seen happen many, many times when it comes to childhood abuse. But anyway, so she seemed to be intimating like maybe sexual abuse. I don't know. I guess I'm just paranoid that the therapy isn't going to work out. And Darcey might have been sexually abused. I don't know. But now we've got some great information. The therapist is still, doing pretty good in my eyes. Not that she needs to perform well in my eyes, but I'm just worried for Darcey's situation. And so Darcey said that dad worked a lot and then the divorce. Those two things alone can make you feel like a worthless child, I just want to say. And this is a thing I want to tell people, is that parents need to be there with the kids, like day in and day out. Kids need parents there, not visitation, not like Disneyland dads. Like kids need the parents there all the time. Now with divorce, it gets challenging, but it can be achieved. And I've seen co-parenting happen. I've seen, parents that are divorced, they get along really well, and they're, the non-custodial parent will just stop by the house and hang out for an evening with the kids. And I know that can be difficult if you hate your ex-spouse, but anyway, so the point is that those things alone could make a child feel worthless, give them that notion that they're worthless, and then they have to develop all these defenses around that feeling of worthlessness. Maybe always trying to appear like you're on top of things. Maybe always trying to look like you're fashionable and totally awesome. Maybe dating people that will confirm this deep-seated belief that you're worthless. Dating people who treat you as if you're worthless. Maybe dating people that are kind of inaccessible so that when they reject you, because you're positive they're going to reject you, it won't feel as bad because, well, it was sort of doomed from the beginning because they lived across the ocean. I don't know. Maybe we'll get into that, as therapy progresses.
So we miss spending time with him and us being like a family. My sister and I had an older brother that was 3 years older than us, Michael.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me about Michael. Did he kind of take over that paternal role for you in the house because your dad was gone so much?
Yeah, he had to be like the father type role.
All right, so it's a great question. And that's coming back to me now from a previous season. in which Darcey and Stacey had talked about that. They had an older brother that died, and he was sort of their father figure or a protector. And when I hear that, I think, well, what was he protecting you from? And it seems at the very least he was there to be a father figure in the father's absence. But I'm guessing there's more to it than that. Either a lot of conflict between the parents. You know, we've seen video of the mom. I think they don't really introduce the mom. They don't interview the mom. I don't know. Who knows what's going on with the mom, but she seems a little blank. I don't know. Let's continue watching.
What's your relationship like with your brother now?
He's passed away. Yeah, he had a really rare form of cancer. 24 when he was diagnosed and passed away at 27. Everybody loved Michael. He was the only boy in the family. He was actually, he was very motivated and a protector. Actually, the last Silva.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So it's good. She starts to cry. The therapist says she's sorry, meaning that it's like, I see your pain. So we're getting into the main core issues here, which is great. A great beginning to the very beginning of the very first session. This is fantastic.
It's not okay.
Growing up, I felt always protected by Michael, especially because every few years we would move to a new place. It was hard because our dad, he just wasn't there 100%.
Right. So there's that detail too, that they moved around a lot. And I talked about in previous videos about how traumatic that can be for kids. For adults, it's easier for us to handle. For us to move to another town, it can be a big problem. But for us, we're older, we can handle it, and it's easier for us. For kids, when they bond with their teachers and other kids, and they lose that can be devastating to young kids. And then they go to the new school, and now they're the new kid. They're the weird one. And they might get bullied, they might be shunned. And then they get a little bit of friend stuff, and boom, now they're separated again. The little bit of shred of closeness they got, now they're at another school. And eventually kids, they just give up and they become more insular. And so they really depended on each other, and they really depended on the brother. It's a lot of pressure to put on a child brother, right? He would have been 10, 15 years old as he's trying to emotionally care for himself. I'm sure he was going through a lot of difficulties too, and for his younger sisters. So it makes me wonder if the rivalry between Darcey and Stacey is actually not in relation to the dad, but in relation to the older brother, or both. I don't know. Let's continue watching.
And my brother held that together while my dad worked.
Considering your relationship with your dad and the dynamics of what your life was like growing up, and the constant movement, the constant distance, and he's home, he's not home, he's here, he's not here, you became accustomed to that, almost like a distance love, where it's like, I love you from here, over Skype, over the phone. Ultimately, your goal is, no, I want the unit.
I do want the unit.
The areas that you may want to consider working on would be having your voice be heard, loving yourself more, and not holding on to guilt or anger.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the last statement, it's like, it's jumping the gun, I think, a little bit, and a little simplistic. It's like, Darcey, stop holding on to things. I don't know if that's rational to say to someone. But I like she seemed to be drawing some connection between dad being gone and moving around, and also dating people from far-flung areas. We don't know if those things are connected, but we certainly can imagine they might be. The therapist didn't say anything directly about that, but seemed to be alluding to some potential path of conversation that they might have in the future.
And just taking more time to kind of self-reflect on you and what parts you want to work on, to have your next relationship be something that's more healthy.
I'm glad I did therapy because it helps me kind of realize more about myself.
Yay, she likes therapy. Fantastic. Now, let him do therapy, take the cameras away, and proceed for the next number of years to go through therapy. It'll take a long time, and I hope that she does it because she deserves it, as you do as well.
want to be able to ask for things that I do want in a relationship because I do deserve that. I shouldn't be scared to ask what I want.
Right. So there that is. There's that notion of just like, I deserve better. And yes, but that comes from a narrative of I'm letting people abuse me. I'm letting people mistreat me, which isn't exactly the way I would frame it. With Jessie, who knows what was going on with that relationship, but with her and Tom, they both triggered each other and would hurt each other's feelings, and then they would both mistreat each other, as far as I saw. But anyway, this is great. But let's conclude, and I will say that's the end of the episode. I'm so happy she's in therapy. Everyone out there, go to therapy too. If you haven't, you deserve it. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.